I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand, who is at the White House for us this morning. So, Natalie, as you heard just moments ago, the president is signing this executive order that could bring down the cost of prescription drugs. The other big news this morning from the White House is this notion of rebalancing trade with China. What are your first thoughts in just listening to the president this morning? He's sort of been all over the map with his remarks, but what's your takeaway?
Good to be with you, Glad. Well, President Trump, he called this temporary agreement with China a reset. He also mentioned that he might be speaking maybe with President Xi later this week. So that remains to be seen. But, you know, the trade agreement, he hasn't spent as much time on that topic as we would have expected. He did spend a fair amount of time, but really heading into this news conference this morning, which, as you noted, is about prescription drugs, we had heard some of the most extensive remarks regarding this weekend's meetings with Chinese counterparts from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who, you know, heading into the weekend really tried to downplay expectations about a breakthrough or deal being reached. But now we know there was this significant breakthrough and an agreement by both the U.S. and China to lower the current tariffs, 145% that was imposed by the U.S. on Chinese goods to 30%. We know that the fentanyl-related tariffs are still in place, but really this pause on those sky-high tariffs will allow the two sides to continue these intense negotiations over what the White House has been talking about as it pertains to the trade deficit between the U.S. and China. Also, the president's push to open up markets to American companies, which he did touch on today. And again, what he's talked about regarding curbing the flow of fentanyl. So really, while this was a breakthrough, a lot of hard work remains ahead in the next 3 months as the two sides continue talking about this larger trade agreement.
Of course, the question becomes what did the United States get out of all this turmoil over the last several weeks as the president engaged in this trade war with China? Even on Fox News, I've seen some reporting that the president blinked, that in this game of chicken with Xi Jinping, it was the United States that ultimately capitulated. Let me ask you about the details of this executive order that the president is proposing to sign on prescription drugs and why the White House has been pushing for this and how he gets around Congress. Because ultimately, something like this, I don't believe can be done simply with an executive order forcing drug companies to lower the price of drugs. Price controls is something that you don't normally see in the United States. What are you hearing?
Well, this was something that the first Trump administration also tried to do, this most favored nations drug policy, which essentially what the president is saying is he wants the U.S. to be paying what other countries are paying, noting that the price that the U.S. pays is roughly 3 times as high compared to other countries. So he tried to move forward with this during the first administration, specifically targeting certain drugs in the Medicare Part B drug plan, and that was contested in the courts. The big pharmaceutical companies, they've come out against this. There have been challenges. This latest form of the plan is also expected to be challenged, and we're also waiting, Vlad, for more details about exactly how this would work. Details about which drugs, which drug plans would be impacted. But really what the president was saying today is he doesn't want the United States to be subsidizing, he says, health care in other countries that are paying such lower prices. And he also took aim at the pharmaceutical companies, said that, they need to stop price gouging. But already we've seen the pharmaceutical companies come out swinging against this latest plan. And again, as you noted, this is likely going to be challenged. This really would require an act of Congress. So this is going to continue to play out likely in the courts.
Yeah, President, in delivering his remarks, Natalie, as you heard, gave an anecdote about a friend of his who takes the, quote, fat shot drug. And my guess is that that's Ozempic. Of course, we've reported how expensive those medications are for people who are morbidly obese. So we'll see how it all plays out. We're watching there the president, along with the Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., delivering those remarks. Obviously, Natalie, if he starts to take questions from reporters, is that expected, Natalie? Do you know?
We'll have to wait and see, because keep in mind, Vlad, he has a tight schedule this morning. He's expected to, depart for the Middle East, his first scheduled big international trip this hour. So we'll have to wait and see whether he leaves time for questions or has to just get on the plane.
All right. And with that trip, Natalie, that he's expected to take, let me just ask you before you go, the reports that he might accept a gift from the government of Qatar, a plane, a luxury plane. There are some members of Congress, mostly Democrats, who are complaining about this, saying it's a severe conflict of interest. What is the White House saying?
Yeah, already they're trying to push back against this criticism and saying that this is under review, that of course they will comply with the law. So both sides kind of noting that this isn't quite a done deal. And that, again, it's going to go through all the proper forms of review to make sure that it would be in compliance if it does move forward with happening.
All right, Natalie Brand for us at the White House. Natalie, thank you very much. Stocks on Wall Street are surging on the news out of the White House on that pause in tariffs between China and the U.S. Let's bring in Javier Davidid for more on this. He's a CBS News business contributor and business editor for the Dallas Morning News. So, Javier, what does this pause signal?
Well, look, the apocalypse has been postponed, but maybe not canceled just yet. Lots of caveats built into this. It's temporary. It's a 90-day pause. We could easily find ourselves back at square one. It's happened before. It could happen again. And there's still sort of a baseline of 10 to 30% of tariffs baked into everything. So, but at least we're not getting those exorbitant triple-digit percentage point markups on Chinese goods that we were just a couple of days before.
And so this all started, as you know, back in April. What's been the gain for the United States? I mean, this announcement today is great for the markets. I see the markets are happy because perhaps it signals a less chaotic policy from the White House. But what did we all get out of this?
I want to, just for an intellectual exercise, I want to key in on the words of the Treasury Secretary, who said the quiet part out loud. Neither the U.S. nor China want a quote-unquote decoupling, and that's kind of a fancy word for the severing of the symbiotic link between the world's two largest economies. If you want the U.S. to reclaim its title as this manufacturing powerhouse, which the White House seems to want to do, the president wants to do, decoupling is exactly what you want to happen. So the secretary saying this is basically an admission that you're not going to be able to unlock these two countries or these two economies without lots of damage. And it's a tacit admission that we're not going to be sort of the manufacturing warehouse to the world that China is, and that apparently the White House wants. So there's a question that's percolating in everyone's minds. What was all of this for? And it's still not answered as of yet.
Does this pause help boost the global supply chain and slash prices for consumers, at least temporarily?
Yeah, I mean, consumers, have been very much feeling the pain, and unfortunately, they're not likely to feel the price impacts right away, primarily because we still have a higher baseline of tariffs. There's still at 10 to 30% on some goods, on most international goods. But again, we're not getting double and triple prices imputed by 145% tariffs. But, since the start of the year, businesses, this is exactly what's been happening. Businesses have been trying to get ahead of the levies by preemptively hiking prices. And the biggest way they're being felt is in credit card APRs, mortgage rates, auto loans. All of those are tied to Treasury yields. And I always say, if I said it once, I said it 1,000 times, ignore the stock market, watch what's happening in bond yields. The bond yields are telling a lot more skeptical. They're baking in a lot more of a premium for the uncertainty and the risk. So there's going to be some a little bit of leeway that customers or consumers will get, but not a whole lot. But there's still a lot of uncertainty, a lot of seesawing, and just the realization that some of the risk hasn't diminished. And in the short term, at least we'll have a lot of more goods coming in from China. We won't have those fears of empty shelves. We were talking about that a lot over the last several weeks. This really does open the spigots for some of the goods that were being withheld, but they'll still be a little bit more pricey.
Really interesting stuff. All right, Javier Davidid for us. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Sure.
Turning now to developments out of the Middle East, where Hamas is expected to release hostage Adnan Alexander in the next few hours. That's according to President Trump. He is believed to be the last surviving American-Israeli captive held by the militant group in Gaza. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News contributor Robert Burer. Robert, good to speak to you. What can you tell us about this expected release?
Well, we're expecting this in the next couple of hours, President Trump just said, and there's great anticipation in Israel. Of course, a lot of joy to see this soldier, 21 years old, when he was only 19 when he was captured from his base on the Gaza border on October 7th, 2023. And this is the first hostage release that we've seen now for more than a couple of months. So a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement, but it's also bittersweet because there are still at least 20 more living hostages. There's a feeling in Israel also a little bit of hurt that, the only reason that this soldier, Idon Alexander, is being released is because he has an American passport.
Robert, there's been some reporting that once this release happens, that the president wants a photo op with this young man in Qatar, which would be remarkable given that the Qataris are reportedly the ones who are funding Hamas. What are you hearing about that?
Possibly. We have to see actually what his condition is when he's released, Idon Alexander. He will be taken to a military base and then on to a hospital to see how he's doing. If he's healthy enough, there has been reports that he would go to Qatar, and that would certainly be interesting. But, Qatar, even though they are a key supporter of Hamas, they've also been a key mediator in this deal to get Idon Alexander back, but in all the hostage negotiations that have been going on now for a long time.
And what do you make, speaking of that trip that the president is about to undertake in just a few hours, Robert, that he is headed to the region, but not meeting with our staunch ally, the Israelis? Why is that?
Well, there's some consternation here in Israel that he isn't coming here. Israel has long been described as the closest U.S. ally in the Middle East. Israel has really been sidelined. But, that could possibly change now with the release of Idon Alexander, where we just heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu that they're going to send a delegation of negotiators to Qatar tomorrow when President Trump will be there. So perhaps we'll see some movement in the hostage negotiations that could make Israel more a part of what's going on. But there is sort of a feeling here in Israel that Israel has been sidelined. Maybe the U.S. is unhappy with the continuation of the war going on in Gaza.
Got it. All right. Robert Burer for us, reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you, Robert, as always.
Thank you.
All right, new flight delays at Newark Liberty after a third technical issue this week. We are at the, actually in 1 week, we're at the airport with the very latest. Stick around. Another day of flight delays and cancellations at Newark Airport. It comes after an equipment outage yesterday, the third in less than 2 weeks. The FAA says a backup air traffic control system momentarily failed, leading the controllers to order a 45-minute ground stop. Let's bring in CBS News correspondent Meg Oliver, who's joining me live this morning from the airport there. And Meg, you spent a lot of time traveling in and around Newark. Why does this keep happening?
Vlad, I've never been at Newark this often over the course of a week. I've been here every other day. There are several factors at play. We know that there's aging equipment that is causing some of this, and then we've got the severe air traffic controller shortage, and then compounding the problem here at Newark, ongoing construction on the runway. So it has been an absolute roller coaster for people flying in and out. We've seen extensive delays and cancellations, some flights canceled permanently for the unforeseen future. I can tell you today, it's absolutely dead here, unlike Friday. Right now, we're looking at maybe 58 delays, 82 cancellations. Put that in comparison to Friday when there were more than 370 delays and more than 140 cancellations. So every day is different. We know we saw that ground stoppage yesterday for 45 minutes here. No way to spend Mother's Day when you're trying to get home to celebrate your mom. Right, Vlad?
100%, Meg. So Newark is really not, though, the only airport that's having these issues. What happened over at Atlanta yesterday?
Yeah, we're seeing a ripple effect, right? So in Atlanta yesterday, it was actually worse than flying in and out of Newark. They had equipment problems on the runway, so they had to slow down flights. They had more than 200 delays and cancellations as well. So it was a real problem flying out of Atlanta. You know, last week, when I was here on Monday, it was an absolute mess. Then by Wednesday, we saw a huge improvement. And then again, that second outage happened early Friday morning, just before 4 a.m., and it was dead again here. So I think people are trying to figure out where to fly in and out of New York. So some people are now going to JFK or LaGuardia instead of coming here. But right now, it is absolutely dead here.
All right, Meg Oliver for us at Newark Airport this morning. Meg, thank you very much. All right, top military officials from both India and Pakistan are warning each other of the consequences of violating the ceasefire deal that was worked out over the weekend. This comes as clashes continue hours after the deal. I want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Asencio to talk more about this. So, Remy, what are the details of the ceasefire, and what would cause it to fall apart?
Yeah, Vlad, good to see you. Well, we have at least an outline right now of this deal. It's a comprehensive ceasefire, and so it applies to all forms of military engagement on both sides. And these are the kinds of attacks we saw from last Tuesday when this latest violence started through the early part of Saturday over 4 days. Artillery shelling, fighter jet airstrikes, drones dropping explosives, and top military officials are supposed to be talking with each other today. They may be doing that right now about those next steps. But yes, this could fall apart, but it appears that both sides are at least trying to keep this agreement, even after we saw some violations in those very first few hours after that ceasefire was announced. India had reported blasts in Kashmir, the cities of Srinagar, Jammu. India's foreign secretary said the army retaliated against Pakistan, but now both sides are claiming victory. Also, they're claiming dozens of deaths on both sides, the worst in 2 or 3 decades. And to your question, really anything could spark more violence, as it has, as you know, as we know, since the 1940s.
Remy, I just listened to President Trump in the White House taking credit for the breakthrough between the two countries and shouting out the Vice President and Secretary of State Rubio. But India is downplaying the U.S. involvement in the talks. What are you hearing?
Yeah, similar. Pakistan cheered, praised U.S. involvement, but India downplayed that as a victory that trying to put them together, India and Pakistan together, that the two figured it out on their own. But President Trump, we saw, claimed very quickly credit for that ceasefire. Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Rubio reportedly had been monitoring the situation about those tensions. But only after that, Trump posted on Truth Social, did India and Pakistan come out with their own announcements. He said that the U.S. could help with tensions by potentially getting more involved economically along with politically. On Truth Social, he wrote he was going to increase trade with both of these so-called, as he put it, great nations. The takeaway I'm seeing here is that this is perhaps a carrot mentality. The U.S. is a major trading partner for both countries, India and Pakistan. If the U.S. offered better trade deals or market access to one or both, it could potentially use that as leverage to encourage both countries to lower tensions, to find some kind of peace. But, you know, as we spoke about last week, both governments have stirred up very nationalist passions in recent years, in the past decade or so. So that's going to be a political hurdle, too.
All right, Remy Asencio reporting from London for us. Thank you, Remy.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, folks, stick around. We got more news ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. I want to take you back to the White House, where President Trump is taking questions. He just spoke with reporters about the proposal for the government of Qatar to gift him an airplane for both presidential and later personal use. Let's watch.
So thank you very much, everybody. I think it's a very important day. In many ways, you have, we'll start with the Houthis. We go to Pakistan and India. We go to what we did with China, the trade deal, and with UK. And by the way, many other deals are coming in very much. At a certain point, we'll just set the price because we know where we are. But we'll just set the price. But world trade is going to be South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here. Yeah.
Please. Mr. President, thank you. Are you letting China off the hook for these 90 days, and do you really believe that they will follow through with non-tariff barriers and remove those?
Non-monetary tariffs, yeah. Yeah, I think they're going to follow through. I think they want it very badly. I think they want the deal very badly. Again, this doesn't include the steel tariffs that I put on a long time ago that Biden tried to get off, but he couldn't get them off because it was too much money. You know, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China, what a lot of people don't know, but we put on the tariffs originally. And if I didn't do that, we wouldn't have a steel industry today. Now we have a thriving steel industry. It'll be thriving much more with what we're doing because this is the next level. But it doesn't include that, doesn't include cars, doesn't include pharmaceuticals when we do that. And the reason we're doing that will be to get them to come back in the country. You know, there are, again, I always say it because a lot of people forget, but if a company like Eli Lilly, which is making a massive investment in the United States right now. They're building many, many plants. They've already started like 7 of them, many plants, but they are not going to be tariffed. There's no tariff cost. So they're all doing that. They're all coming back to the United States. I mean, I'll tell you what, I hope I get the benefit of watching this because, as president, because, you know, it takes a little while to do this stuff. And we're doing it early in the administration. If you think of it, we have, I believe, if you look at the real total, it's over $10 trillion committed for plants and factories. Other administrations haven't had $1 trillion over a 4-year period, even over an 8-year period. We have over $10 trillion committed in one form or the other over 2 months. Give me a break. I'm here to hear 3, but let's give me a break on the first month. We want to get acclimated. But, you know, but if you think about it, it's really too much.
All right, you've been listening to President Trump giving some remarks from the Oval Office on a wide range of issues, including his plan to lower prescription drug costs, the rebalancing of trade with China, and his upcoming trip to the Middle East. We're going to have a look at the weather forecast coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. In his first address to the members of the world's media this morning, Pope Leo XIV pushed for the release of imprisoned journalists and called for free speech protections. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay has more on the Pope's remarks.
Well, one of the biggest takeaways from the Pope's first ever audience with the press was the language in which he did it. He started off by saying buongiorno because we are still in Italy, but then he switched into English, and he even cracked a joke.
They say when they clap at the beginning, it doesn't matter much. If you're still awake at the end and you still want to applaud, thank you very much.
But again, the message was in the language itself to a lot of people, especially because he didn't speak in English when he appeared on the balcony of St. Peter's as the new Pope on Thursday, nor did he speak English yesterday when he made his first appearance on the balcony again for Sunday prayer. So it suggests that he's taking a different posture when he's speaking to the world's media by speaking the world's universal language of English. And it's really something to hear the Pope speak not just in English, but with an American accent, and some might even say a Chicago accent. Also yesterday in that appearance from St. Peter's Square, he called for peace in Ukraine. Not just any peace, but he called for a just peace. And this morning, he actually spoke to the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who invited him to come to Ukraine. So these are some of the early tea leaves of the papacy of Pope Leo. Back to you.
All right, Chris Livesay for us reporting from Rome. Thanks, Chris. Let us bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Good morning to you guys at home. Look, it's a soggy start to our week after what was a soggy weekend for much of the Gulf Coast. A slight risk for some excessive rainfall resulting in some flash flooding. Head down to Miami. Concerned about a little bit more rainfall, and with all the urban areas there, we could see a little bit more of a flooding concern today. In fact, so many people, 130 million people under the threat for flash flooding across much of the southeast up into the mid-Atlantic today. So we'll be watching that as we go through the next couple of days here, because this storm system will be very slow to move. It's a low pressure system that just really has nowhere to go in a hurry. It'll be slowly tracking up to the north, bringing a lot of that tropical moisture from the mid-Atlantic into the northeast as we go through Tuesday, even into much of Wednesday as well. So we'll continue with this concern for heavy rainfall. Miami today, but as we head to the next couple of days, 3 to 5 inches of rain up into parts of Virginia into D.C. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate you. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are after the break. Mugo Diwe is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.